Yesterday, my mom wanted to watch a movie called The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. It's a movie based on his book by the same title. And it's like, well, it's better to watch the movie than read the book. And it's kind of interesting because, okay, my thoughts on it are that the whole focus of the documentary, or whatever you call it, was all about how reliable are historical documents and trying to prove that the four New Testament Gospels are historically reliable. And I consider myself sort of an ultra agnostic about history. So it's like I wouldn't say that I'm 100% sure if George Washington or Abraham Lincoln even existed. And the further back in time you go, the less likely I am to believe something. It's sort of like so when there's a story from the Bible or any other story from history, like Aesop's fables or any of the writings of Plato or Aristotle or any of those ancient things, I think, well, obviously somebody wrote something, but there's several things to consider. Was it intended? Was it at the time somebody wrote that was a story that they meant it to be fiction, or what was it a fiction that somebody wrote and expected people to believe it, as truth for some agenda? And those are two alternative possibilities, other than the one that Lee Strobel and others are trying to promote, the idea, well, this stuff that was written actually all happened. And it's kind of an interesting thing because I think the reason that most atheists reject the reliability of these documents is not because they're old necessarily, and not just because they are against God and want to sin and don't want there to be a God because they don't want to be accountable to someone. I think that was the angle that Lee Strobel was trying to promote. He was trying to make it sound like his wife became a better person after she started going to church and became a Christian or whatever. And then he tries to use the fact that his life changed for the better after he became a Christian. Which of course, if something improves someone's life, it has nothing to do with whether or not that belief is true. And here's the deal. I don't believe that movie or the book by the same title will ever make an atheist like me a Christian. And what I mean is, most atheists that I know of, well, they're materialists. That is, everything is physical. I mean, they don't accept supernatural, metaphysical, immaterial, outside space and time. All the things that God is defined as, because the whole idea of religion, not just Christianity and Islam, but Hinduism and Jainism too. Like, Jainism is cool. I like Jainism, you know what I mean? But it involves belief in an afterlife, reincarnation, and everything having a soul and that survives and lives on another life. I mean, that's just it. Of course, people have a problem believing the resurrection from the dead of someone who really died, and there's a big difference between somebody who was in a coma or their heart stopped for a short time and then they come back. But if somebody was crucified and then 3 days later, after they were totally known to be dead, then they came back to life and we're talking to people, well, yeah, if that actually happened, people would be astonished by that. But I mean, I don't believe it because of course I've never seen anybody that I've known know for sure that they died and then come back. Like take for example, let's just say that I witnessed. Here's a very good example. Let's say someone I knew. Let's say my mother, or say my friend George Ortega, or one of those people I saw them be hit in a car wreck, and I saw them die, and then say their body was cremated, and so their whole body was turned totally to ash. And then later on, after seeing all of that, knowing they were cremated, knowing that there's no way that their body was still alive in any way, then they came back, their body was intact, and they were talking to me. I kind of have to believe that. I mean, if I saw that, I mean, that's what it would take. The belief that somebody can really come back from the dead, which implies a few things. It means time can be reversed, sort of, or that somebody still exists in some form, has a soul that's them, and that the body can be reconstructed, which of course requires a God. It requires a God that can create matter or change existing matter and completely reform a person, which is a very interesting thing, because one of the reasons I don't believe that ever happens is because I've never seen it, for one thing. Second of all, one of the claims that I often hear from Christians is that God has a plan for each person's life and has stuff for them to do, which I don't believe, obviously. But if that's the case, then let's say something happens where they're killed. You know what I mean? Well, then why doesn't let's say they still have stuff to do and they were killed in some violent death by some crazy murderer. Well, then why doesn't God just resurrect them? So anybody who dies before they've done everything they're supposed to do just gets resurrected. I mean, we see people resurrected every day. I mean, that's just it. I mean, stuff that happens every day, all the time. You know, people eat, they work jobs, they talk, they play games. You know, all these things people do every day. Everyday occurrences that we all see. Well, we're used to it. Of course, we believe it. You know, so it's. I think that believing that there was some, say, philosopher that said something like Aristotle or Plato, or those are the ones that come to mind, or whatever, you know, something like that, where there was some person who lived and they said this stuff. They taught this stuff. I mean, that's believable because people say things all the time, but, you know, being able to turn water into wine, walk on water, raise others from the dead, raise themselves from the dead, make the blind see, all those things. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that people like me generally don't believe because we don't see it. And I just don't think that we can seriously take the stuff written in the Gospels as reliable because from our experience, based on all experience, I'll say miracles don't happen like that. You know? So that's my primary thing with it. And I'm not so sure whether Lee Strobel was really an atheist. You know, like, I don't know. It just, because the story seems a little bit fake. It seems like the Christian movies often have this angle like, oh, well, atheists are bad people who just want to sin, and that's why they want to pretend there's no God. But then after they become a Christian, because they're convinced by some evidence, which really all the evidence in that video was just Lee Strobel talking to people who were already Christians. They were already Christians. They all had a bias in favor of believing the Bible's true. They were, you know, all that stuff. And I'm like, it was kind of disappointing. There were all the people interviewed, all the people that spoke in that video, none of them were of my position. None of them were doubters that Christianity or miracles happen, you know, like. So that's the thing, is it seemed like the whole movie was, right from the start, the whole story was engineered to just, I don't know, like it was engineered to perhaps just convince people that what they already believe is true. But I don't really know if it would ever convince an atheist of the sort that I am, because I'm the sort that was a Christian because I was told all my life the Bible was true and there was a God and all that. And now I don't believe it because I don't really believe things that I can't see some way of it being demonstrated to me that that stuff is true. Or otherwise I'd see happening today, you know. So that's my thoughts on for the moment. I don't think that that was a very convincing movie. Like I don't think it's going to make someone a Christian. And as soon as somebody does accept the supernatural, does accept miracles and raise from the dead, why not believe stuff from the Hindu Vedas? Why not believe the Mahabharata? Why not believe all sorts of religions? Why not accept one of the Greek myths as true and believe in the Greek gods? Or Norse mythology. Why not believe those things are true? So I don't think that even if somebody is convinced to accept the supernatural, I don't think that leads to Christianity necessarily. It could lead to any number of other religions in the world. I just know most about Christianity because that was what I was raised in. And I've just read a little bit about Islam and Hinduism. So anyway, that's what I think for now about that movie. So yeah, whatever.